I did, but as I testified on...
Did you do that?
Yes, I did.
You found, by observation and feel, no swelling, or what we sometimes call even a lump or a goose egg, right?
No, counsel, there was massive swelling, but the examination, as I testified previously, was necessarily limited.
Right. You examined him after surgery, I'm sorry.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, you mentioned something on direct examination about the initial physical examination of Matthew on February 4th in the emergency room. Do you remember expressing some views on that?
If you'll refresh my memory, I can give you a precise
did you express
response.
some doubts as to whether or not the physical examination that was performed on February 4th of Matthew Eaton's body was careful?
Oh, I recall now my previous testimony, and what I said was that the occiput may not have been fully examined at that time, as efforts were made to sustain this child's vital pulmonary and cardiac and cerebral functions.
Well, Dr. Newberger, what you're telling this jury is that you are, in fact, speculating, true, that maybe the emergency room doctor, Dr. Mandel, did not conduct a careful physical examination of Matthew Eaton's head and scalp. Isn't that what you just said?
Manifestly no, counsel. That's a complete mischaracterization of my testimony.
You didn't say that.
That's
Didn't you
correct.
just say that you believed that maybe in the rush to treat Matthew Eaton, the emergency room doctor might have missed swelling of the scalp? Isn't that what you were just trying to communicate to the jury?
I was saying, I did testify, that certain aspects of the examination may have had to have been limited because of the commanding need to save this child's life if possible. And so, very frequently in my work, at the outset, bruises, swellings may not be identified by our professional staff. One can't do everything at once, and one has to attend to what's really important in saving a child's life.
Well, so when you just say here, the swelling around the head, you're saying may have been missed. Aren't those the words you just used? Isn't that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm saying.
Thank you. So you're saying that you think that Dr. Mandel, in the course of his physical examination of Matthew Eaton upon arrival at the hospital, may have missed a goose egg or some swelling around the head.
Yes, he may have missed such a swelling.
Have you reviewed the medical records to see what the time period was between the initial admission and the CT scan?
I don't recall it precisely.
Are you aware that you looked at the medical records before
Yes.
you came here to testify?
I have reviewed the records.
You reviewed the medical records before you spoke to the police on the afternoon of February 5th?
Yes.
Did you consult with Dr. Mandel, the emergency room doctor, before you offered an opinion to the police as to the manner and nature of the injury suffered in this case?
No.
Have you, prior to coming here and testifying, spoke to Dr. Mandel about his examination?
No.
Yet you feel comfortable telling this jury that he may have missed swelling on the head and incorporating that as a basis for your opinion here.
Please understand, counsel,
Can you answer that question? I'm sorry.
I can't answer the question yes or no because I didn't incorporate his...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, is the reason that you are saying that Dr. Mandel may have missed some swelling of the head in his initial examination is that you have some concern that if, in fact, this baby had been slammed down, as you have hypothesized, with the equivalent degree of force that is on the order of a child falling out of a second-story window onto concrete, that there absolutely must have been some swelling. You have that concern, don't you?
Not in the least, counsel.
Not in the least.
No, there may not have.
Thank you. Now, so you feel perfectly comfortable in your assertion that a child can be slammed down, all right, as the manner that you demonstrated for this jury, with the degree of force that is on the order of a child falling out of a second-story window onto concrete, and there will be absolutely no swelling whatsoever on the back of that head. That's your opinion.
Is that a question?
Yeah.
Well, then let me explain.
Is that your opinion?
I can't answer the question yes or no, counsel,
Can't?
but I'd be happy to try to give you an explanation.
All right, Doctor. Doctor, go ahead and explain that.
Thank you.
Take your time.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I believe that this assault, I beg your pardon, I believe that this child's injuries occurred very shortly prior to the child's coming into the hospital. Very frequently, it takes time for the skin and soft tissues of the skull, after there has been a substantial trauma, to swell. And very frequently, for example, after high-velocity automobile accidents, there can be very substantial organ trauma and underlying fractures without overlying skin signs or soft tissue swelling. Sometimes it takes time for these things to develop, especially in a situation where the child's cardiopulmonary capacity is compromised, where the heart may not be beating well, where blood may be being lost, for example, into the structures within the skull. There may not be the kind of inflammatory response and soft tissue swelling that there would be under other circumstances. Very frequently, in cases of child abuse, we see quite serious fractures without overlying skin signs or soft tissue swelling, and I believe that the massive force that caused this fracture could well have been associated with next to no swelling at the time that Dr. Mandel conducted his examination.
Finished?
Yes, thank you.
Now, are you familiar with CT scans?
Yes.
Use those all the time.
Well, our radiologists do. I'm not a radiologist.
Yes, but you consult as part of your child abuse team with radiologists.
Yes.
And you're aware of the fact that CT scans can pick up evidence of swelling that might not be observable to the physician examining with the naked eye.
That's correct.
And is your, did you examine what is known as the bone window in this case on the preoperative CAT scan?
I recall going over the CT scans with Robert Cleveland, one of our radiologists, but I don't remember on which of the studies I looked at the bones.
Did you ever look at the bone window on the preoperative CAT scan of February 4th?
I reviewed all of the radiographs. I'm sure that I saw it. Just can't remember on which studies I focused on the bones.
Exhibit 38.
Sure.
all see the... Now, and if you want the rest of the CAT scans to orient yourself, would you not agree that Exhibit 38 is one of the series of bone window CAT scans of February 4th, 1997, before Matthew Weaver was operated on?
That's correct.
All right. And would you not agree that there is virtually no swelling whatsoever, or at most slight swelling, in the right occipital area?
Yes, it appears that way.
There's virtually none, right?
That's my testimony, yes.
So, thank you.
You're welcome, Counsel.
So you're now of the opinion that it is somehow possible. Well, which one? Let's start it this way. Your estimate is that the impact injury would have been suffered within 2 or 3 hours or 6 hours prior to admission to the hospital.
I believe that the injuries that the child suffered occurred shortly before the child was brought to the hospital. I don't think it was more than 3. I doubt very strongly it was as much as 6. It may have been very, very soon prior, for example, within the hour or within the half hour.
You're saying within a half hour? You're saying that the child's admitted to the hospital at 4:10. You're aware of that?
I don't recall the precise time. My testimony, however, is that it was a recent infliction of injury.
Are you aware that the child's emergency room records indicate that Matthew was admitted at 4:10 or 4:11?
I don't have the material in front of me.
Do you need
Counsel.
the records to refresh your recollection as you testify?
Or alternatively, you can...
Would you accept the counsel's representation that the admission was at 4:10 or 4:11?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. And that, would you accept my representation? Would you like to look at it again? That the CT scan, the bone window that you examined, was at 5:23.
Yes.
All right. So, are you saying that you think that the injuries occurred in this case like a half hour prior to admission, sometimes around 3:30?
Counsel, I have no way of knowing, but they appear to me to have been recently acquired by this child.
Right. Are you telling this jury, based on that explanation you gave as to the biomechanical mechanisms involved in impact, all right? And that was a biomechanical explanation, was it not, as to whether or not you'd see swelling from the impact you described?
Yes, it was.
And you were relying on principles of biomechanics in your explanation as to why you didn't think you'd necessarily see swelling?
I'm relying, in addition to principles of biomechanics, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, on my experience in dealing with cases of child abuse, which are clearly cases of child abuse, and with those many other conditions on which I consult, in which my colleagues and I believe that it is not child abuse. A number of children sustain quite severe traumas to their skulls. Not all are cases of child abuse, and our practice at our hospital is to consult seriously with neurosurgeons, with orthopedists, the specialists that deal with these traumas in order to try to discern what may have happened.
So the answer to my question, Dr. Newberger, that you were relying in part on biomechanical principles in your explanation is yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, you are saying, you agree, do you not, that this bone window, Exhibit 38, right, that CT scans are better at picking up soft tissue swelling than even gross examination?
No, I don't agree with that at all,
You
counsel.
don't think so? But you've indicated that you're not your expertise is not in neuroradiology.
That is correct.
But you know enough to realize that there's virtually no swelling whatsoever on this bone scan at 5:23. Is that true?
As depicted in the
As depicted in the exhibit? Can you just answer that?
I
Yes or
cannot
no?
answer that yes or no
Did
further.
you just answer that? Yes?
He just answered it one to one.
Well, I'm just reestablishing it again to move on to the next point. All right? You've just agreed, have you not, that there is virtually no swelling at all at this bone window taken on 523, right?
Well, counsel, a fuller explanation is necessary than I can give in a yes or no answer.
All right, Doctor, I know you want to explain, but didn't you just agree just a few minutes ago that there's virtually no swelling on Exhibit 38, yes or no?
Yes, on this exhibit, on this
Thank you.
window.
Thank you. Well, you want to look at all the bone windows on February 4th, every single image, and tell me if you can find swelling anywhere on those?
I'm happy to try to respond to questions that you pose to me.
Well, I'm saying to you, do you...
We are happy to listen to questions and answers, all of us are.
So my question to you, sir, is do you believe that there in any, just so we're clear on this, showing you Exhibit 37, this is what's known as the scalp film, correct?
Yes,
And this is these radial lines through the skull, right, indicate that in this instance at about 7 millimeters all the way across the head, that's what the CAT scan is showing you.
it's not quite at 7 millimeters. That's the depth of the cut.
Depth of the cut, right?
That's correct.
All right. And so what the bone window does is that it begins at the very bottom of the soft tissue and goes all the way up to the top of the head and gives you a view of all the soft tissue, right? That's how these things are designed.
Counsel,
Is that how it's designed?
it's not designed, no, to give a view of all of the soft tissues.
But I think but as you indicated before, neuroradiology is really not your area of expertise.
That is my testimony.
Now, so to sum this up, your position is it is possible to have an injury, an impact injury such as you've described, where the baby's head is slammed down onto a surface, the manner you displayed to the jury, with the degree of force on the order of the child falling out of the second-story window on concrete, and there would be virtually no swelling in your terms on this bone window. That's your position.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Newberger, you've testified about impact injuries from car accidents here.
Yes.
You were using that as part of your opinion as to why you would see no swelling. True?
It was part of my explanation to the jury, yes.
Thank you. And Dr. Newberger, in terms of, for example, nervous tissues, have you ever heard of anything called a freestanding compression test?
No, I do not believe so.
Have you ever heard of anything with respect to nervous tissues called a force vibration test?
No, not to my recollection.
Are you familiar with studies of the mechanical properties of the dura?
I certainly have read studies of the mechanical properties of the dura.
Would you describe yourself as expert in that area?
No.
Are you familiar with studies as to the tensile properties of nerve fibers?
I've read studies of the tensile properties of nerve fibers, but I would not characterize myself as an expert